Okay, so when I'm walking out on ice for the first time, or even if I've been fishing one end of the lake and I'm walking to another end to explore new ice, I want to take a spud bar with me, and what I'll do, I'll hit the ice. I know for that every hit I'll get about 1 inch. If I can hit 4 or 5 times, I don't go through. I can proceed and keep testing the ice. I like to test the ice about every 30 to 40 yards, because you just never know where there might be a spring or a thin area. So always carry that spud bar with you. Also, when I'm out here, set the spud bar down, I have ice picks here in my little pockets. These are really handy. They have a little pick that comes out, it's protected. If I fall in through the ice, I can use these to help grab and pull myself out. So let's take a look at how that works. You can see that lets me grab into there. I can pull forward while I kick with my feet, pull myself up out of the ice. You always want to retrace your steps if you fell through the ice, because you know the ice that you walked on before is safe. Or if you come into a thin area, you want to retrace your steps back to where you were and stay in those safer areas. Alright, let's get through the ice. Now, I've seen many ways to get through the ice. I've seen guys use chainsaws, I've seen them use axes, but I've also seen them get very wet and sweaty when they're doing that. A better way to get through the ice is to invest in an ice auger. Now, there's lots of different ice augers on the market. Some are manual, and you just use your arm power and you push down as you rotate the blade, it cuts through. Or you can buy gas, propane, and now electric augers are also on the market. There are even some that have auger bits that adapt to 18 and 20 volt lithium powered drills if you already own one of those. So that makes for an easier investment. Either way, it's a worthwhile investment. In Washington State, all you're really going to need is 6 to 8 inch auger. Even a 4 inch will do for most of our pan fish, and it's a lot easier, especially if you're using a manual auger, to make 4 and 6 inch holes than it is 8 and 10 inch holes. So I have here a lithium powered ion auger, and we're going to knock a little hole in the ice. I love this thing. It runs on a 40 volt battery, can drill over 1,000 inches of ice on one charge. I didn't even recharge it last year through the entire season, even though I did a considerable amount of ice fishing. So I'm going to knock a hole in here, and we're going to show you how to check ice thickness and clear the ice hole for fishing. So here we go. Now, one of the cool features about this auger is it has reverse, so I can reverse, push down, and that blows all the slush in the hole out of it. So it's relatively clear already, compared to if I was using a hand auger. You can see not too much slush in there, but let's go ahead and clear out the hole and check the ice thickness. I'm going to use a ladle for this. So just scrape away some of this stuff, clear all the slush and ice from the hole. What's nice about this is you don't want to leave that in there, because it's those little ice particles that start to help the ice reform when you're fishing, and you don't want that. Now I can check the thickness. It has a measuring stick there. It's about 5.5, almost 6 inches. It's nice, clear, black ice. That's what I want to see. You can almost not even see the bottom 2 inches of ice. It's so black and clear. A little bit of air trapped in the top. But you want at least 4 inches of that black ice. If it's white ice, it can be considerably weaker. So be careful when you're drilling through. Make sure you check the type of ice you have and its thickness, because it's really important to your safety, because nobody wants to go swimming when they go ice fishing. Alright, now let's get to fishing. Here's a fish. Got him. Got him. It's a really pretty brookie. Nice. Not a giant. It's beautiful colors. So one of the questions that I get a lot is investing in an ice rod worth it? And unequivocally the answer to that is yes. Trying to use an ultralight out here, or a 6-foot rod, fishing in the hole, just makes it so hard to leverage the fish. Here I can stand over the fish and fight it, manipulate the direction of the fish, trying to get its head turned. You can't do that when you're standing a long way away. See, right now I got this brook trout's tail first, having a tough time turning him, and it's going to take a little bit before I can get him turned around. So definitely invest in an ice rod. Absolutely worth it. And this is going to be a drop dead gorgeous brookie. Look at that. Alright, calm down there, bud. Wow. Look at the colors on that little guy. Beautiful little buck. Awesome. Let's get him back in the water real quick. So the first question I'll get a lot of times, come on. Come on. I think I need better hemostats. A little too bulky. Come on. There we go. See you later. Is how long a rod do I need? For me, the division is between 30 inches or greater and 30 inches and below. Most ice rods are going to be 20 to 40 inches. But for me, there's really two different styles of fishing that those rods are suited for. Rods under 30 inches, I really like those if I like to be huddled tight over my hole. It lets me manipulate the fish a little bit more, but really shorter rods are really nice for when you're fishing inside of pop-up tents and things like that. It gives you a little bit more space inside there. A longer rod can be awkward because you get backed up against the back of the tent, or if you have a tent that pops up on a sled, similarly you have similar problems. So typically most of the rods I'm going to use for that situation are going to be below 30 inches. Now, if I'm going to be hole hopping a lot, which is moving around from hole to hole, looking for fish, standing, just being more active, a 30 to 36 inch rod is actually pretty ideal for that. If you want something that splits the difference, then shoot right around that 30 inch mark. I have a lot of rods that are 28 to 32 inches, precisely because sometimes I do want to fish in a tent when it's super windy and chilly, and other times I want to be out moving around hole hopping. I mean, it's warm today, it's been snowing a little bit this morning. It's right around freezing, so I feel very, very comfortable out here, and having just a little bit longer rod is nice. Another reason you might want a longer rod is if you're going to run a dead stick, and I did a video on different dead stick options. So that's where you essentially just leave your rod in a rod holder or automatic hook setter or something. A longer rod will make it easier for the rod to fight the fish while you're trying to get over to it. So a good example of this is this HT Ice Blue rod. It's a 30 inch rod. I really like this rod for my dead stick rods. Now I have two different rods here made of very different materials. This is a graphite rod. Graphite's faster material, that is, it returns to its original shape faster. You see how it looks stiffer, and that's not just because they have similar power. These are both medium light rods. It just is a stiffer material and wants to come back to its original shape, so that's why we say faster. This is a fiberglass rod, and a lot of ice rods are made of this. It's very slow, so it takes longer to get back to its original shape. It bends deeper into the rod. These are really nice for dead stick rods because this will really absorb a lot of the energy of the fight, and that puts less pressure on the drag system and the line. So whatever material you choose to go with is up to you. One of the nice things about fiberglass is because it is so soft and slow, it's sensitive. And this one has a hot tip, so I can see that bite really, really well. A lot of my graphite rods, they're a little too stiff to see these really soft bites on these trout, especially perch. So they incorporate what we call spring bobbers. This one actually has one tied in, made of titanium. You can see that lets me see that bite really, really easy. Titanium is nice because it returns to its original shape. It has high memory. Now you can also buy aftermarket spring bobbers. Let me grab one of those. And this is a graphite rod here. This spring bobber just attaches onto the rod, and you run the line through there, and it's made out of steel. It also lets you see that bite really easy. These are really great for soft biting trout and perch. So I really recommend having a spring bobber in your tackle box on those days that the fish just aren't committing. So I hope that answers some questions about rods, but absolutely do make the investment in them. They're not all that expensive. I tend to shy away from recommending combos because a lot of times the companies will go cheap on the reel even though the rod's pretty decent. So Buy a rod. They're anywhere from $10 to $100 depending on how much you want to spend, but the majority are in that $10 to $30 range. And then invest in a decent ultralight spinning reel or inline reel, or you may already have one at home if you like going ultralight fishing in the mountains for small trout. Alright, hope that answers some questions on rods. I gotta get back to fishing. Got him. Nice. Big hook set on that guy. Get him out of the... There we go. Not ready yet. I'll back that off just a bit. So the two types of reels I really like to use for ice fishing are spin cast. Any ultralight spin cast will do. Just spool it up with whatever line you choose. There's another big trout right behind him. It's kind of cool. The nice thing about these is most people already own spin cast. Come here, big girl. Or big boy, I should say. There we go. Ooh, man, look at the colors on that guy. Gorgeous. Oop, more spilt milk. Living up to my channel's name. I really like spinning reels. Most people already own them. Just get a properly sized one for your ice rod. Or you can use inline reels, which offers the advantage of being able to not add line twist. So it makes it a little bit easier to drop your gear down a little faster and not get your line all twisted up. Okay, let's get this guy free. My stomach's hungry. I didn't eat enough breakfast this morning. Oop, there he goes. See you later. Yeah, so on a spin cast, you know, I typically have to kind of open the bail and either flip the rod tip to bring line out. Oop, there's one just hit it right there when I just dropped. That's great. You're getting water all over my camera. Come on now, calm down. I literally just dropped that through the hole and it just smashed. Alright, get this one back in the water really quick before I got rudely interrupted there. They're very hungry this morning. They're not even, you don't even need bait, apparently. Oh. Okay. See ya. He knocked over my worms. So when I'm taking line off this spinning reel, I end up pulling it a lot, just kind of to get it down where I want it to go. Or I end up opening the bail and kind of popping the rod tip. Whereas with these inline reels, which are really nice, some of them have a button you push. This is the Black Betty Freefall. I literally just pull the trigger here and the line starts to fall. And then I just release it and it stops. Some of them have push buttons. That makes it really easy for me to drop that down the strike zone, jig it, and get a fish to come in. Oh, there's a fish coming after it right now. I'm watching him. Ooh, almost had him. See if he comes back. He's hungry. Oh, he's swimming right there. Am I gonna get him? Nope. Okay. So that's your two primary reel options that I'd recommend. Most people already own an ultralight spinning reel, so you can just use that. But if you want to upgrade to these inline reels, I don't think you'll be sorry about that. There we go. Got him. So let's talk a little bit about fishing line. There's 3 different options when you're ice fishing. One is monofilament, which is relatively inexpensive. It stretches better than other lines, and it floats. It has okay abrasion resistance, but it's not the greatest. It's not a very hard line, it's a softer line, which means it can have memory. Can it come out big? Nope. Alright, there you go. Beautiful. Another gorgeous brookie. Another type of line I really like is fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is very transparent underwater. It's a little more expensive than monofilament, but it's denser than monofilament, and because of that, let me put this guy back. it sinks a little better. So if you're fishing really small jigs, fluorocarbon's the way to go to get your gear down there faster. But another great thing about fluorocarbon is because of that higher density it sinks, it's also a little bit more abrasion resistant. So it's really nice against the ice. And then finally, the third option for lines is a braided line. Now there's two types of braids. There's a weave braid, so like Power Pro, they take 8 strands and weave them together. Or this is the Berkley Micro Ice Fireline. That's a fused braid. I really like it because it has less of a surface area for ice to grasp and form on. And it has very low stretch, so it has extreme sensitivity, so you can really see the bite very well, especially when you're fishing deep. It has pretty good abrasion resistance, although it can start to fray against the ice over time. But I really like it as a really small diameter. I can get quite a bit of line on a small reel, and it lasts me for 1 or 2 seasons, and then I replace it. So that's your 3 options: the monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. Alright, there's a fish coming in already. Is he gonna get it? No. He's looking at it. There he is, got him. Didn't take long. Yeah, I saw my lure come down, that fish come up and hit it really quick. And I got wrapped up in my transducer, which is part of the problem with fish finders. Gotta get them out of the way. Beautiful, man. Another brookie. There we go. Calm down there, bud. Nice. Well, that just shows how handy those fish finders are. It let me see that fish come in and immediately knew to be ready for a bite, and I hooked up immediately. Okay. Come here. There he goes. Where are you swimming to? Let's swim right there. So that's the advantage of fish finders. It lets you see those fish come in. Is it absolutely necessary to catch fish? Absolutely not. But it sure is handy. I have a whole video that shows you how to read fish finders, and I'll show you the link there up above, so you can click on that. If you don't have a fish finder, my recommendation is always to start first by identifying your depth of the water. That's one of the major advantages of a fish finder. It just lets me know where my gear is, how deep I am fishing in, and how deep the water is I'm fishing in. And then it lets me see those fish come in. Here's another fish already coming in to take a look at it. Ooh. He took my bait. Little turd. So you saw that my jig came down here, fish came up, struck it, and then I swimming away. There's a lot of interference there, so he probably kicked up some debris when he got hooked there temporarily. He's still there on the bottom, so I'm going to go back for him. He's swimming around, he wants more. He wants more worm. Let's go back, let's try again. Oh, he's swimming away, I better get down there fast. Let's see if he's still there. Oh yeah, he's there, he saw it already drop in. He's gonna come up to it. Come on. I know you're there. Here he is. He wants that worm, doesn't he? No? Oh yeah, he did. Whoa, whoa, look at the colors on that. That is beautiful. He just jumped out of the water. Man, that is golden. That is a golden brookie. I've never seen a brookie with that type of color. Clean him off a little bit. Look at the color on that. Holy smokes. That is absolutely gorgeous. Look at this thing. I don't ever, it's like a char. I mean, it is a char. It's a brookie. But it's like an Arctic char. It's coloration. Get this beautiful fish back in the water. Get some water across the scales there. There it goes. Yeah. You ready? Goes. Sweet. So yeah, fish finders really do help. If you don't have a fish finder, you can drop a weight to the bottom and estimate the depth that way. So that gives you some way to know how deep you are fishing, and that can be really handy. If I don't have a fish finder, I'm going to work my way from the bottom, jigging my way up through the water column, and then working back down until I start finding that depth that the fish are at. Oh well, got him on the drop. That didn't take long. Alright. Come here. Yeah, I was wondering why my line wasn't going down, because he picked it up right on the drop. A little brookie there. All I'm using today is just a small chartreuse Swedish pimple. The nice thing about ice fishing is you don't have to use a whole bunch of different lures to catch a variety of fish. So, small Swedish pimples, small lead or tungsten jigs work really well. Small Castmaster spoons. And there's just a cornucopia of lures out there to use and try. But, you know, just invest in a few, maybe a half dozen small spoons, and you're probably going to be alright. You can catch bass, you can catch crappie, trout on all of these. And they're not that expensive. You can tip them with a little bit of bait, maggots. I'm just using small pieces of night crawler today. If you don't have either of those available, you can always just use small artificial scented plastics or baits like power bait. They have little maggots and asticots that you can use that work really, really well. So just one or two of those on the hook. That's all you need. You don't need a big chunk of worm. Small baits do tend to perform better in ice conditions than big, large baits. So when I'm talking small, you know, 1/12 to 1/16 ounce spoons or jigs. You can even go a lot smaller on your lead or tungsten jigs. And a lot of people ask, well, what's the advantage of tungsten? Well, there's a couple advantages. One is that on some lakes we have lead restrictions because of the presence of looms. So it allows you to fish a small lure there. But another advantage is that they have a higher density. So for their small size, they sink a little bit faster and get down in that strike zone. And it also makes for a little bit more a reaction. Ooh, did you see that bite there? Wow, can't believe I missed that one. It makes for a little bit more of a reaction when you're jigging it. So it keeps a stiffer connection between you and the lure, and it lets you detect that bite just a little bit better. That was a good strike, but didn't stick. My favorite colors, it's going to vary depending on the fishery, but you can never go wrong with silver, gold, chartreuse, green. They all work really well depending on the fishery. I haven't found any one color that particularly outdoes the other, although I do tend to fish chartreuse a lot just because I'm very confident in that color. Alright, so I had a really good morning, but now I got to get back to work, which is a bummer. I'd rather stay out here fishing because it's been such a great day. I use an otter sled that has some tow straps on it that I can actually clip to my harness I'm wearing here. And then I can make it easy for me to pull all my gear in one go. One thing you need to do when you're moving your auger back and forth from your vehicle and out on the ice, always put the cover on these blades. They are really, really sharp. I learned that the hard way last year. Accidentally caught my pinky on it. I left a lot of blood on the ice, so I think a lot of fishermen thought I had a really good morning there because I left a lot of blood around the particular hole, but just not something you want to mess around with. They are extremely sharp, which you want them to be to cut through the ice. Alright guys, I hope today helped answer some questions about ice fishing. If you have any more, put some comments below. Please be sure and subscribe. Share this video. I feed off of your guys' feedback. It inspires me to get out here and do more of these videos. I hope you have a great ice fishing season. Be safe, catch lots of fish, and I'll see you later.